Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the second video in the restoration of this Nordmende Skandia V24. This is the lady that's as old as I am. She's had her cabinet cleaned out, which came out beautifully in the last video. I showed you that. This time I decided to go for the cleaning of the body. Always nice to clean the lady's body, but I had to go one step further. It wasn't working. AM wasn't working. If you recall, I had FM, no AM. I did the full recap. I still didn't get the AM back. I was expecting to get it back then, but the paper caps that I replaced, or the capacitors that I replaced, were almost all in the audio section, which was a shame. I really thought I'd get that AM back. Didn't come back with that, but it came back with a little bit of luck at the end. And in the process of getting there, I distract myself a lot. And one of the things I did was I decided to clean up the whole thing with my air compressor, you know, the airbrush compressor. I'll show you how I did or the result of that. So if this sort of thing interests you, stick around, enjoy the video. First thing I'm going to do on here is not tempt fate. I'm going to remove the faceplate, get all this out of the way, maybe clean it up already. And then I've got access to the full radio, and perhaps I'll see parts of the radio in here that I normally can't see from the front. And also I'll be able to protect this because it is glass and it's fragile. It's very simple. A couple of screws on here, get that out of the way, keep it safe. Oh, there's a little washer on here, got to protect that. That helps between to prevent friction between the two knobs. Got the lower one out, and it's even got a bit of felt so it doesn't scratch on the faceplate. Keep that safe. I have been asked what you do if you break the faceplate. The answer is simple. You start crying because it's a real pain. These things are difficult to get. I know that for the American radios, there are companies that are making new or replacement faceplates, but for the German radios, you've got to try and find one that someone's put up for sale on the on eBay probably. You can find them sometimes. Now I've got to remove this, and this is being held with these brackets over here. I don't know whether I could just bend that out or no. Let's have a look at the side there. I think it's probably better if I loosen this or remove this, and then I think I'll just be able to slip this out of the glass, maybe even from the other side, we'll see. Yeah, this comes out, and I think I can just pull it out from this side. No, I need to loosen that as well. So let me go to the other side. I think I just need to loosen this a bit. Yep, and it's out. Good. So what are we facing here? This thing's got that tape on here, which I'll replace. It's in perfect condition, a bit of dirt. And the back. There are a couple of, this tape will have to be replaced, but there are a couple of spots here where they put tape. This is probably some sort of heat-resistant tape. There's some tape there as well. That's where the magic eye is. You can see it's sort of affected it with the heat, but there's no damage. It's a good sign. So I'll put this aside, maybe even clean it up now, since I'm doing everything backwards. One thing I always advise you to do is put these things back. If you don't need to clean them yet, put them back where you got them from, because you'll have a problem finding out where they go afterwards. I sometimes just forget how things get mounted again. And the idea is not to get to the end of restoration and have extra screws and nuts and bolts lying around. It's probably not too bad if you do that in an IKEA piece of furniture, but on a radio, really not advisable. So that's in place, nice and safe, it won't get lost. Now we can really look at this, and because we've got this plate in front, we don't really see much more than we saw before, but we can get to all this to clean it up. We can get to the front here to clean it up. And I'm really not sure what I want to do first. I'm really itching to start doing the cleaning with that alcohol and the airbrush compressor, but I've got to probably look at the capacitors first. On top here, it's actually quite simple, as I've mentioned before. It looks like all the capacitors on this board are film caps, so I don't think we'll need to replace any of that. But there is one here, that bugger over there. That is actually across the output transformer, if I'm not mistaken. It cuts out some of the high frequencies. We can see that on the schematic. And that guy needs to go. This resistor, somebody rightly mentioned, is a resistor with a fusible link. You can see that little blob of solder there. It's a 1.5K resistor, and I've measured it. It measures well. And then it's got a fusible link. So if this thing starts drawing too much current, that will melt, and you've basically got yourself a fuse. So you shouldn't really replace that just with a resistor. But fortunately, I don't need to replace that. So it looks like on the upper side, all I need to replace is one capacitor, and then everything else is underneath. Let me get rid of that guy for now. And here we are, it's done. As I said, there are no paper caps on that side. All of them were on here, and they've all been replaced, and there's not much of them. The electrolytic was replaced, so we've ended up with a graveyard of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 caps, plus the one that I took off the top. So it seems that everything has been recapped that I need to do. I've checked some of the resistors as I went along. They all seem to be fine. So what I'm going to do now is try it out, see if we've got the AM bands back. I certainly hope so, but no big deal if we don't, because it's making the right noises. It might just be an alignment issue. Let me try that. Okay, let's hit short, medium wave. I think that's it. See if we get anything. Got the mini whip in there. Volume on max. We've got some noise. Not much there, is there? Oh, there's our FM. In fact, the antenna I've got here is still the mini whip going into the AM antenna socket. Let me put it in the right socket and change it to the FM dipole up here. Okay, what do we get now? Okay.
Mas, na realidade, esta
pretty bass heavy.
Ele pegou como tema num dos próprios
okay. See here, this thing is bass to the right, less bass to the left.
E depois faz uma série de 22 variações em que umas vezes parece seguir mais modelo.
Oh, that's pretty good.
A arma do exército disse-se desgostoso, mas não dizia nada porque sabia
that
que
thing is really just smashing it. Now, that could be very strong signal, yes, possibly, but more likely the resistor, the biasing of this is probably not absolutely correct. So I've got to check the resistors around here. This thing shouldn't be that strong. I mean, it shows a strong signal, which is great, but it's a little bit fake. So our FM is good, our audio is good, and it looks like we didn't make any, well, I didn't make any mess ups when I did the replacement of all the capacitors. Now, the one thing that really gets to me is looking at all this grime. It always gets to me, and I'm going to start by doing a bit of cleanup before I get onto the alignments and trying to figure out exactly what's wrong with the AM. I'm not worried about it. I really am not. This is a very simple circuit, and I'm confident that I can get it going. It's probably someone tweaked something over there. It could be a capacitor somewhere else here, one of the ones that aren't supposed to break down. That did. That also happens. So I'm going to get started on this, try and make it a little bit more pretty. After all, it is my twin. I don't want it to look ugly. I mean, one of us is bad enough. So let me get cracking on that. She's had a bath, she's had a polish, she's had a complete facelift, and the result is beautiful. Now let me give you a closer look at what this thing looks like after the cleaning operation. The faceplate just needed a little bit of warm water, some washing up liquid, Nothing too rough because you don't want to remove the text at the back. This one is probably not something that'll come out because there's a paint layer, but you still have to be very careful. The piano keys are perfect. The knobs, same story. And of course, it's had the fresh layers of tape put on here. This is that fabric plaster. You can still get it, fortunately. Just makes everything look a lot neater. Using my airbrush system, you're able to get all the wires with a little brush and then spray it with the airbrush with alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and this is the result. It looks really, really good. I mean, you couldn't wish for better than that, could you? I suppose you could. A few spots there that I had to clean out with, still had to clean them out with cotton swabs, but most of it was brush and airbrush. And this is the hero of the day. Just a really inexpensive airbrush compressor. Put alcohol in there and it does the job. The brush I use is something like this. It's natural fiber brush, and I just put in some alcohol, rub this around, and then spray the dirt off with the airbrush again. I'm really happy with this. This is something I'd wanted to try for some time. Finally, I got offered one. I did a video on it. I'll link it above. And the only reason I have this is to clean radio chassis. Best thing I ever got for cleaning. So now we're left with the elephant in the room, which is no AM, or rather very poor AM. I think it's receiving. I think the oscillator's working. Actually, I can check that. I'm going to check that the oscillators are working and be able to scratch that off the possibilities list. To check that our oscillator is working is actually very simple. I've got the scope probe just connected to chassis, and here's the probe, and I'm just touching it. I'm not touching any metal. I'm just approaching one of the sides of the capacitor. It happens to be this one that does the oscillator, and I'm just resting it there like that. I've got long wave selected, and if I look at the scope, and you can see that wave there, and watch this. As I tune, it's changing the frequency, and it says 677 kilohertz, which is about right because we're doing long wave. Remember, the IF is 460, so whatever frequency we want to get, our IF is 460 higher, so that's perfectly fine. Medium wave, obviously that goes up because the medium wave frequencies are higher. We've got there at the moment 1.18 megahertz. Again, we're on the right ballpark. Let's try shortwave. And of course, that goes higher still. Let me change the scope. And again, if we adjust the tuning, we can see the oscillator is adjusting its frequency. So our oscillator is working perfectly. I've got to look for the problem somewhere else. The part of the circuit we're interested in is this section over here. This is the RF section for the AM bands. That there is the FM. We know that's working fine, and they all meet up at the CH81. I presume that the problem could be from here on forward. Remember, you've got IF cans that only relate to the IF, to the AM IF, but I need to check whether that is the problem or whether the problem is further back here. Now, what we've seen that is working is actually this section over here. This is the oscillator section that goes up from there, goes up to the ECH81. That's the tube that makes the oscillator work. So the part that we are not certain of is from here. We don't know whether this section is getting the signal, and there isn't much here. These are all passive components. Quite simple, really. You've got the antenna coming in here. It can get switched in between. This is that switch that allows you to use the external antenna, the AM antenna for the FM as well, or you can use the dipole, but we're interested in this section down here. So the signal comes through here. This is the IF stopper, and then you've got these coils, and this is the ferrite antenna. Now, I've had situations where the ferrite antenna has one of the wires has been broken, but I don't think that's it, because we're not getting AM either, which means that, well, the only common section between AM, between medium wave, long wave, and short wave is actually prior, could be the switch, or it's this section here. Let me have a look at this. Let me go look at the antenna wire. I'm going to follow the antenna wire from there, make sure that it's all coming through. This here is the, other than the IF chain, this is the RF section that is common to shortwave, medium wave, and long wave, right? If there was something wrong with this coil, shortwave wouldn't work, but long wave and medium wave would. If there was something wrong with this antenna, then one of the lower frequency bands wouldn't work, like long wave or medium wave, but the short wave would work. This reminds me of something. Let me check it out. Look at this. This is short wave. Let's try medium wave. Mid-afternoon, so, but it certainly is receiving. I might even get something here on long wave. Yep. So what was wrong? And why did I say that it reminded me of something? One of the antenna wires at the back, one of the antenna wires had broken loose from the solder connection. And the reason I started laughing is because I had exactly the same thing before. I can't remember which radio it was, but I had the same problem. The antenna wire was literally broken loose in the inside, so whatever I connected to the end there was doing nothing. The mini whip was coming in, but effectively the only wire, the only antenna it had was the little piece of wire that was going to the input coils. So we have AM. Brilliant. And shortwave actually does pick up. Now this time of the day, it will probably be up here on the higher frequencies. As I mentioned earlier, or I think in the last video, it's very difficult to fine-tune this, to tune this, because this thing goes from 6 megahertz all the way to 18. So when you get a station, to get it right on takes a little bit of finesse on this end. This thing is up at 18.5 or 19 megahertz already. That is bloody good reception on shortwave. Very, very good. And of course in the evening it'll get better down in the lower frequencies. So yeah, okay, our radio is working completely. One little antenna wire. And this just shows you sometimes the silliest little things that can catch you. Fortunately, I've had this before. So before I panicked or started getting all theoretical and technical, I decided to go and look at the possibility that it was a repeat case. Right, folks, I'm really pleased with the results so far, and I'm going to leave it here for now because the next stage will be the final, well, it'll be the alignment, IF and RF alignment for AM and FM. I'll do that on one video, the last video, and then we can wrap this up. As you might remember, I've already done the cabinet, which is sort of cheating, but it works. And one of the things that makes me happiest is that this tube seems to be working very well. That tube is that expensive one that is a triode and a pentode. And I'm happy to say that this one had no problems with tubes, not even the Magic Eye. Magic Eye is really alive. It's really bright. And it's working. Obviously, this is a very weak signal, but let me go to the local station on medium wave. There we go. That's the only local station we have on medium wave in Madeira. So that's where I'm going to wrap it up for today. And I want to thank you for your company. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, click like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. If you want to support the channel directly, you can do so on Patreon. Links are in the description below. And once again, thanks for watching. Bye for now. And most of all, Stay safe.